Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, Episode 1 begins with Yuji Itadori running across buildings while being chased by a massive cursed spirit. As Yuji tries to escape, the curse suddenly grabs him. Before it can kill him, the curse is struck down by another sorcerer and its body collapses onto Yuji. The one who killed the curse is Yuta Okotsu. However, it is immediately revealed that Yuta is not there to save Yuji. He has been assigned to execute him. The story then shifts back to the Zenin clan. Naoya Zenin is shown mocking his own mother and openly insulting women, comparing them to Maki Zenin. He meets Jinichi Zenin and Ogi Zenin, who scold him for arriving late while his father is on his deathbed. Naoya shows no concern and confidently declares that he will become the next head of the Zenin clan. Soon after, they receive the news that Naobito Zenin has died. His will states that Naoya will inherit the clan and its assets, including the cursed tools stored at Jujutsu High. However, if Satoru Gojo dies or becomes permanently unable to fight, Megumi Fushiguro will become the head instead. This condition deeply angers Naoya. Learning that Megumi is currently in Tokyo searching for Yuji Itadori, Naoya decides to kill both of them so that the inheritance will remain his. Back in Tokyo, Yuji is seen resting alone when Choso approaches him and asks about his injuries. Yuji says he is recovering, possibly due to Sukuna, and can feel his power increasing. Choso suggests returning to Jujutsu High, but Yuji refuses, blaming himself for Sukuna's actions and the deaths of innocent people. He also apologizes for killing Choso's brothers. Choso tells him that they would have forgiven him because they are brothers, and that family is what truly matters. Yuji then runs through the city, deliberately attracting cursed spirits towards himself. He defeats several of them with ease and leads the rest into an underground bridge where Choso is waiting. Using piercing blood, Choso destroys the curses in a single attack. When one curse tries to ambush Choso, Yuji instantly kills it. Choso realizes that Yuji has learned to control his cursed energy and has become far stronger than before. Before Choso can speak further, Naoya Zenin appears and asks about Megumi Fushiguro's location. Yuji questions why they should run, and Naoya reveals that Yuji has been sentenced to death now that Satoru Gojo is gone. Naoya attacks without hesitation, easily overpowering both Yuji and Choso with his speed. Choso realizes Naoya must be using a special technique, while Naoya wonders about Choso's identity. Suddenly, a massive surge of cursed energy fills the area. Yuji briefly thinks it might be Satoru Gojo, but instead, Yuta Okotsu appears, landing with enough force to shatter the ground. Naoya recognizes Yuta as the sorcerer assigned to kill Yuji and steps aside. Choso urges Yuji to escape, warning him that fighting Yuta would mean certain death. Yuji runs, but Yuta quickly catches up to him. Meanwhile, Choso fights Naoya, who mocks blood manipulation and claims that only piercing blood is truly dangerous. Choso vows that Naoya will not leave alive after attacking his brother. Yuta finally reaches Yuji, revealing that the opening scene was not Yuji running from a curse, but from Yuta himself. A fight breaks out, and Yuji is completely overwhelmed. Despite his gentle appearance, Yuta possesses an immense amount of cursed energy, far more than Yuji. Yuji tries to fight back using a knife, applying what Gojo once taught him, but Yuta easily breaks through his defense. Yuji destroys Yuta's katana with a powerful kick and continues attacking, refusing to give up. Suddenly, Yuji is restrained by Rika, who appears behind him and locks him in place. Unable to move, Yuji watches Rika as Yuta approaches, holding his broken blade. Apologizing to Yuji Itadori, Yuta stabs him through the chest. Yuji collapses as Sukuna briefly manifests inside him, but the scene quickly shifts to another battlefield, where Naoya Zenin is fighting Choso. Naoya uses his overwhelming speed to dominate the fight, moving so fast that Choso can barely react. Every attack lands cleanly, and Naoya keeps mocking Choso, calling him slow and stubborn. Despite taking heavy damage, Choso refuses to fall. He reminds Naoya that he is the eldest brother of 10 siblings, and that pride alone keeps him standing. Choso activates flowing red scale, enhancing his physical abilities and sharpening his perception. For the first time, he can properly track Naoya's movements. Naoya increases his speed again and stabs Choso in the stomach with a knife,
causing massive blood loss. He confidently claims that Choso cannot stop the bleeding, and that using weapons makes things easier and cleaner. Naoya openly admits his hatred toward his older brothers, saying that older brothers who are weaker than their younger siblings deserve to die. Choso responds calmly, explaining the role of an older brother. He says an older brother exists to guide, protect, and become a model for the younger ones. He suggests that Naoya is practiced precisely because his own older brothers were weak, forcing him to surpass them. As the fight continues, Naoya realizes that Choso is not dying despite the blood loss. Choso reveals the truth about his body. As a death-painting womb, a hybrid of cursed spirit and human, he does not die from blood loss as long as cursed energy remains. Choso spreads his blood across the ground, causing Naoya's feet to stick like glue. Taking advantage of this opening, Choso fires piercing blood directly at Naoya. Naoya attempts to activate his projection sorcery technique, which allows him to move at 24 frames per second. However, Choso counters with Supernova, a technique refined over more than a century, detonating compressed blood from multiple directions. Naoya manages to block some of the attacks, but is suddenly struck from behind by Yuta Okotsu, who appears out of nowhere and knocks him unconscious. Yuta explains that Choso's blood is poisonous to humans, making Naoya's condition even worse. He heals Naoya using reverse curse technique and tells him to report to the higher-ups that Yuji Itadori has been executed. Meanwhile, Yuji experiences a strange vision from his childhood. He sees his father, Jin Itadori, and his grandfather, Wasuke. His grandfather warns Jin to stay away from a certain woman or risk death. The memory fades as Yuji regains consciousness. Yuji wakes up to find Yuta sitting beside him. Yuta casually confirms that Yuji is alive. He explains that months earlier, Gojo Satoru asked Yuta to secretly watch over Yuji. Yuta pretended to execute Yuji to satisfy the higher-ups, then immediately revived him using reverse curse technique after stopping his heart. The execution vow remains valid, meaning the higher-ups believe Yuji is dead. Megami Fushigura arrives and suggests hiding Yuji within Jujutsu High. Yuji refuses, blaming himself for the deaths during the Shibuya incident. Megami argues that sorcerers are not heroes, but their existence still matters. He then reveals the true crisis. Kenjaku has initiated the culling game, a deadly ritual forcing sorcerers across Japan to kill each other. Megami's sister, Tsumiki Fushigura, has been unwillingly registered as a participant. The rules of the culling game are explained. All players must enter within 19 days. Failure to participate results in the removal of cursed techniques, leading to death. Players gain points by killing others, and those points can be used to add new rules. Yuji warns Yuta about Sukuna, explaining that 15 fingers have already been consumed. He asks Yuta to kill him immediately if Sukuna ever takes control. Yuta agrees without hesitation. Megami says their next step is to meet Master Tengen. They need information on how to release Gojo Satoru from the prison realm and how to stop the culling game. Yuji asks about Nobara Kugisaki, but Megami stays silent, confirming her fate without words. Choso then joins the group, offering to guide them through Tengen's barriers using his connection to previous intruders. The group arrives at Jujutsu High, where they meet Yuki Tsukumo. They enter the Star Corridor, passing through multiple barriers, until they reach a vast, silent chamber. A strange presence fills the space, as Master Tengen finally appears before them.
Tengen greets everyone present, but noticeably does not greet Yuki Tsukumo. Yuki immediately questions this, pointing out that he greeted everyone except her. Tengen calmly responds that this is not their first meeting, hinting at a deeper history between them. Yuki then directly asks Tengen why he sealed the tomb barriers earlier. Tengen admits that he suspected Yuki might be working alongside Kenjaku. When Yuki asks who Kenjaku is, Tengen explains that Kenjaku is the same sorcerer once known as Noritoshi Kamo and that he is currently controlling Suguru Geto's body. At this point, Yuji asks the question that's been bothering him. Why does Tengen look so inhuman? Tengen laughs and tells Yuji that if he lives long enough, he might end up looking the same. Even though Tengen is immortal, his aging never stopped. He then reveals a critical detail. 12 years ago, he failed to merge with a star plasma vessel. Because of that failure, his evolution accelerated beyond control. Yuki asks why another star plasma vessel wasn't chosen afterward, but Megumi interrupts, bringing the conversation back to the real reason they came. He asks two direct questions. What exactly is Kenjaku planning, and how can the prison realm be opened? Tengen agrees to explain everything, but first sets a condition. He tells Yuta, Yuki, and Choso that at least two of them must stay behind to protect him. Everyone is shocked by this request, as they assumed Tengen was completely safe due to his immortality. Yuki agrees and asks how long the protection will be required. With that settled, Tengen finally explains Kenjaku's true objective. Kenjaku's goal is to force the evolution of humanity across all of Japan. Megumi points out that Kenjaku could have turned everyone into sorcerers using barrier techniques, so why did he rely on idle transfiguration instead? Tengen explains that such a massive evolution requires an enormous amount of cursed energy, far more than Kenjaku currently possesses. Tengen reveals the horrifying truth. Kenjaku plans to merge humanity with Tengen himself. Yuji questions whether this is even possible, since Tengen was only supposed to merge with star plasma vessels. Tengen explains that this limitation no longer applies. Because he failed to merge 12 years ago, his form has evolved so far that he can now merge with anyone. Choso asks how a single being can merge with countless humans. Tengen answers that he has evolved to the point where his existence spreads throughout the world and his soul exists everywhere. Any human who merges with him would become something far beyond a sorcerer, an entirely new kind of being. Tengen also explains that he maintains his current form through barrier techniques, keeping himself under control. But if a merged human were to lose control, it could spell the end of the world. Tokyo would only be the beginning. Yuji asks the most important question, why does Tengen even want this? But Tengen admits that even he doesn't know Kenjaku's true motivation. Maki then asks Tengen why Tengen simply refuses to merge. Tengen explains the real danger. He has evolved so much that he is now closer to a cursed spirit than a human. This makes him vulnerable to cursed spirit manipulation. Everyone immediately understands why Kenjaku chose Geito's body, because Geito's technique is exactly that. Tengen knows that if Kenjaku confronts him directly, he will be sealed instantly. This is why the tomb rejected outsiders earlier, and why Tengen now needs protection. Tengen also reveals that aside from himself, Kenjaku is the most skilled barrier technique user alive, and could destabilize the tomb at any time. But he hasn't yet because he still lacks enough cursed energy. The episode then dives into Kenjaku's past. Long ago, Kenjaku was defeated twice by Six Eyes users. Realizing he could never win directly, he began killing star plasma vessels and Six Eyes users shortly after their birth. However, every time Tengen's merger date arrived, a new Six Eyes user and a new vessel would appear. Kenjaku eventually changed strategies. Before he could obtain the prison realm, one unexpected person disrupted everything: Toji Zenin. Toji assassinated the star plasma vessel, halting Tengen's merger and triggering Tengen's evolution. Later, a sorcerer with cursed spirit manipulation was born, Geito, and everything Kenjaku needed slowly fell into place. 6 years later, Kenjaku finally obtained the prison realm. Returning to the present, Megumi asks why the culling game exists at all. Tengen explains that the culling game's purpose is to gather cursed energy. As sorcerers fight and kill within the colonies, massive amounts of cursed energy are released, which Kenjaku will use for the merger. Tengen also clarifies something terrifying. Kenjaku is not the game master. Even if Kenjaku dies, the culling game will continue until all players are dead, either by killing each other or refusing to participate, which also leads to death. Yuji realizes what this means. They must participate in the culling game and accumulate points to add a rule that allows unwilling participants, including Megumi's sister, to escape. Megumi adds that freeing Gojo was essential because Gojo alone could end everything. Yuji asks Tengen to decide who will stay behind. Yuki and Choso volunteer to guard Tengen. Tengen then reveals the back gate of the prison realm. However, he explains that it cannot be used without the front gate. There are other methods, the inverted spear of heaven and black rope, but both were destroyed by Gojo years ago. Just as hope seems lost, Tengen reveals another option. Among the culling game players is a 1,000-year-old sorcerer known as Angel, who may be able to open the prison realm. Tengen believes Angel is somewhere in eastern Tokyo. The episode then explains the current situation across Japan. 10 colonies have already formed, sealed by barriers. Civilians and sorcerers are trapped across different sides, with many ordinary people caught inside dangerous zones. Tengen then explains the rules of the culling game. Any awakened player must participate within 19 days. If they fail, their curse technique is removed, resulting in death. Entering a colony automatically registers someone as a player. Killing increases points, 5 for sorcerers and 1 for non-sorcerers. Players can add new rules only after reaching 100 points, and any new rule cannot contradict existing ones. Finally, if a player's points remain unchanged for 19 days, they are executed. Yuji realizes what this means. He will have to kill to survive. Everyone then decides their roles. Choso and Yuki stay behind. Maki decides to go to the Zenin clan to gather curse tools. Yuta chooses to enter the culling game to gather information, but suggests everyone enter different colonies to avoid killing each other. This creates a new fear. If Yuji turns into Sukuna while separated, no one will be there to stop him. Megumi notices their concern and reassures them. Before leaving, Maki tells Yuji and Megumi to recruit Hikari, a suspended third-year student. When Yuji asks how strong he is, Yuta replies that Hikari is even stronger than he is. As they leave, Yuji thanks Choso. Choso tells Yuji not to die and breaks down in tears. The episode ends with a sudden shift to a struggling comedian named Takaba performing to a nearly empty crowd. His boss insults him and fires him for being unfunny. Another man approaches Takaba and says that there are only 2 kinds of comedians, those who are funny and those who believe they are funny. He asks Takaba which one he is.
Maki Zenin arriving at the Zenin household. Almost immediately, she runs into Naoya Zenin. He treats her with open contempt, mocking her appearance and belittling her worth. Naoya verbally abuses her, but Maki ignores him completely and continues walking toward the armory. She technically should not be allowed inside. However, Megumi Fushiguro, now acting as the clan leader, granted her permission. As Maki walks, she remembers how she convinced Megumi to take the role. He initially refused, but Maki explained that becoming clan head would give them access to vital intel and clan assets. Eventually, Megumi agreed, even saying that Maki would be far more suited for leadership than he was. Maki, however, knew the truth. She would never receive the clan's support. More than that, she still couldn't create a place where her sister Mai truly belonged. When Maki enters the armory, something feels wrong. Before the scene reveals what she sees, the story flashes back to a conversation between Jinichi Zenin and Naoya Zenin. Jinichi makes it clear that he does not want Megumi Fushiguro as the clan leader. To stop this, he devises a brutal plan. They will kill Megumi, Maki, and Mai. By executing all 3, they can frame it as punishment for rebellion, making the plan more convincing to the higher-ups. Back in the present, the truth is revealed. Mai is lying collapsed on the floor of the armory, badly wounded. Standing before her is their father, Ogi Zenin, who intends to kill both of his daughters. Maki tries to fight back. During the struggle, she breaks Ogi's sword and rushes in, believing she has gained the upper hand. Instead, Ogi calmly slashes her twice, proving that breaking his blade does not stop his technique. As he drags Maki and Mai away, Ogi explains that his strength lies not in swordsmanship, but in being a sorcerer. He blames both girls for his failure to become clan head and declares them his greatest shame. He throws them into an empty training room filled with cursed spirits. It is a place he uses for punishment. Once he leaves, the curses will devour them. Barely conscious, Mai gathers what little strength she has left and gently cups Maki's face. She activates her curse technique. Suddenly, Maki finds herself standing on a beach beside Mai. Mai explains the truth about twins in the Jujutsu world. Twins are treated as a single being. Because of this, neither of them can ever be complete. As long as they both exist, they will always be half-baked. Maki doesn't understand and desperately begs Mai to come back as her sister slowly walks toward the ocean. Mai tells her she will leave her one final gift. In exchange, she asks for just one thing, that Maki destroys everything. Mai cries and briefly appears as her younger self before saying her final goodbye. Maki awakens back in the armory. A newly created sword rests in her hand. Mai is dead beside her. Cursed spirits approach, but they no longer matter. With Mai's death, Maki's heavenly restriction has reached its full potential. She has no cursed energy left, only overwhelming physical power. She remembers her promise. Ogi Zenin senses something terrifying, a presence he once feared. Toji Zenin. He calls Maki a failure and prepares to fight her, but he doesn't even finish speaking. Maki strikes once, slicing his head open, and walks out of the armory without looking back. An alarm sounds throughout the Zenin estate. The Kukuru unit is deployed to stop her. They are elite fighters trained in pure physical combat, and Maki was once part of their ranks. Their leader, Nobuaki, underestimates her, failing to recognize the danger. When the soldiers engage Maki, the screen shifts to black and white. What follows is a brutal slaughter, echoing the famous Crazy 88 scene from Kill Bill. One by one, Maki cuts them down, leaving the room drenched in blood. Nobuaki opens the door and freezes in shock, unable to comprehend what he's seeing. Suddenly, massive stone hands slam into Maki. This is Chojudo's curse technique, a member of the Hei unit, the Zenin clan's strongest sorcerers. Maki escapes unharmed. She kills both Nobuaki and Chojudo. Another Hei member attempts to restrain her, while Junichi Zenin rains down a barrage of attacks. Still, Maki survives effortlessly and kills them all. The only one left is Naoya Zenin. Naoya still underestimates her, remembering how terrifying Toji once was and convincing himself that Maki is only an imitation. He attacks at incredible speed, overwhelming her at first. If he keeps moving, his speed will only increase, just as it did in his fight with Choso. Maki waits. When she gets her chance, she blocks his path, forcing him into a straight line. Naoya charges forward, confident she cannot stop him, but Maki has already understood his technique. As he closes in, she strikes, smashing his head and pulverizing part of his skull. Afterward, Maki searches for her mother and asks her why she once told her to come back. She receives no answer. She slashes her and leaves. Naoya later staggers back to the house, believing he survived. Behind him stands Maki's mother, bleeding, smiling. In her final moments, she collapses onto Naoya, killing him, and says she is glad she gave birth to her daughters. Momo Nishimuya arrives at the Zenin estate as Maki walks, carrying Mai's body on her shoulders. Momo breaks down in tears and asks Maki what she plans to do next. The episode ends there.
Episode 5 begins by focusing on Masamichi Yaga, the principal of Tokyo Jujutsu High, and the true nature of Panda. We see Yaga being questioned by the higher-ups about Panda's existence. They explain that Panda is not an ordinary cursed puppet. Unlike normal puppets that simply follow commands, Panda acts independently, consumes cursed energy on his own, and possesses a core that cannot be removed. This makes Panda a completely self-sustaining cursed corpse. Because of this discovery, the higher-ups label Yaga as a special grade threat. They accuse him of having the ability to create an army of autonomous cursed corpses and place him under arrest. Yaga is imprisoned, where Gakuganji confronts him and repeatedly asks if he truly knows the secret behind creating beings like Panda.
Yaga refuses to answer. The episode then cuts to Yaga inside the forest of cursed puppets he once created. A yellow puppet named Takeru speaks with him, worried about Yaga's condition. Yaga gently reassures him and apologizes, saying he may not return for a long time. He tells Takeru that Master Tengen will protect the forest and that everything will be fine even without him. Meanwhile, Panda is captured and tied up. Atsuya Kusakabe secretly cuts Panda free and tells him the truth. Panda was bait used to force Yaga out. Kusakabe tells Panda to escape and not tell anyone. The scene shifts again to Yaga being escorted outside. Kusakabe appears with his sister, who is confined to a wheelchair. Takeru is revealed to be a cursed corpse, created using the soul information of Kusakabe's deceased nephew. When Kusakabe's sister sees Takeru, she emotionally recognizes him as her child. Yaga apologizes for using the boy's soul, but Kusakabe accepts it, understanding that without Takeru, his sister could not survive. However, Yaga explains that cursed corpses like Takeru cannot leave the forest or exist in society. As Yaga continues walking, Gakuganji confronts him on an empty street. Gakuganji declares that Yaga has only one way to escape: death, and demands the secret of creating cursed corpses. Yaga prepares to fight, knowing Gojo is gone and no one can protect him. The battle is skipped, and the aftermath is shown. Yaga lies mortally wounded on the ground. Gakuganji stands over him. With his final strength, Yaga reveals the truth. To create a self-sustaining cursed corpse, 3 compatible souls must be placed inside a single core, constantly observing each other. Only then does cursed energy naturally form, a process that takes 3 months. When Gakuganji asks why Yaga is telling him this now, Yaga answers that this knowledge is not a gift, it is a curse. Yaga dies. Panda arrives moments later. Gakuganji prepares to fight him, but Panda ignores him completely. Panda kneels beside Yaga's body and speaks calmly, saying he doesn't understand hatred or revenge. He says Gakuganji was nothing more than a knife used by someone else. Then Panda says one final thing: pandas can cry too, and he breaks down in tears. The opening theme plays. After this emotional turning point, the episode shifts to Yuji Itadori and Megumi Fushigura. They recall Master Tengen's instructions about Kinji Hakari, a suspended third-year student running an underground fight club. Hakari organizes illegal battles between curse users while civilians gamble and watch, which directly violates jujutsu laws. Megumi explains that Hakari hates the higher-ups and will avoid anyone connected to Jujutsu High. Yuji and Megumi arrive at a multi-story parking structure where the fights are held. Guards stop them and threaten to beat them if they don't leave. Megumi claims they need money and want to join the fights. When questioned about who told them about the club, Megumi lies and says the person is already dead, earning them a spot. However, the guards decide that Yuji will be the one fighting. Yuji accepts without hesitation. Yuji is briefed on the rules: no running away from the crowd's view, and no visible curse techniques, since civilians can't see curses. Yuji understands that to meet Hakari, he needs to put on a convincing show. The fighters enter the arena, and Yuji's opponent is revealed to be Panda. The fight begins in front of cheering civilians and live cameras. Yuji and Panda secretly coordinate, pretending to fight while barely touching each other. Panda exaggerates every hit, flying across the arena to excite the audience. Yuji is declared the winner. Watching from above, Hakari finally takes interest. He orders his men to bring Yuji to him and tells them to keep an eye on the other boy, Megumi. Hakari sends Kirara Hoshi, his partner and a third-year student, to intercept Megumi. Later, Panda meets Megumi and explains why he couldn't reach Hakari. Panda says he often felt his approach to the control room was met with resistance, similar to Gojo's Infinity. He suspects Kirara's cursed technique is responsible. Megumi memorizes the layout of guards and cameras, and decides they'll need Yuji's help to bypass Kirara's ability. Finally, Kirara escorts Yuji to the control room. Inside, Kinji Hakari greets Yuji and begins talking about money, gambling, and ambition. He explains his philosophy that life itself is a gamble driven by passion, which he calls heat. He believes people only move forward through risk, obsession, and desire to win. He declares his goal: to control the nation's heat through his fight clubs, upturn jujutsu regulations, and reshape the system while the higher-ups are weakened. The episode ends with Yuji listening silently as Hikari reveals his true ambitions.
The episode opens in a parking area near the underground tournament facility. Megumi Fushigudo silently moves through the area, taking down Hikari's guards one by one without drawing attention. He knocks them out efficiently, clearing the path toward the building. At the same time, Panda is already inside, working his way upward in securing the upper floors. After clearing the lower levels, Panda proceeds through the emergency staircase toward the rooftop. Once both Panda and Megumi reach the rooftop, they come face to face with Kirara Hoshi. Kirara immediately notices that Panda has brought someone with him. When Kirara sees Megumi, he instantly recognizes him as the sorcerer who came with Yuji earlier. Kirara quickly realizes that Hikari might be in danger. He takes out his phone and attempts to call Hikari to warn him about the intruders. Before he can finish, Megumi summons Divine Dog and sends it towards Kirara. However, the moment Divine Dog tries to touch him, it is violently repelled and pulled back in the opposite direction, crashing into Megumi instead. Both Megumi and Panda are shocked, unable to understand what just happened. Taking advantage of the confusion, Kirara runs toward the monitor room. Panda chases after him, but no matter how hard he tries, he cannot get any closer. It feels as if he is running on a treadmill, unable to close the distance. Panda shouts that they are not enemies and that they only want to talk to Hikari, but Kirara refuses to believe him. Megumi sends Divine Dog again, positioning it in front of the monitor room door. This time, something even stranger happens. Instead of the dog moving freely, Megumi himself is suddenly pulled toward Divine Dog, as if an invisible force is linking them. Megumi realizes that he cannot approach Kirara and cannot separate himself from his Shikigami either. Megumi tries once more to reason with Kirara. He explains that they are not acting on behalf of Jujutsu High. He asks if Kirara has seen the news about Tokyo. The barriers appearing across the city are not accidents, but part of a planned Jujutsu terrorist attack, unlike anything seen before. Because of this, they need Hikari's help. Kirara responds angrily, saying that Jujutsu High was the one that cast Hikari aside, and now they are only reaching out because they are desperate. Megumi admits that he doesn't know the full details of what happened between Hikari and the higher-ups, but he insists that it no longer matters. Through this conversation, it is revealed why Hikari left Jujutsu High. His curse technique is highly unconventional and unpredictable, relying heavily on risk and luck. The conservative higher-ups feared techniques they could not control, and because Hikari's power did not fit their rigid ideology, he was expelled. Kirara then questions why they would need Hikari's help when they have Satoru Gojo. Megumi answers directly, Gojo has been sealed. Because of that, they have already lost. Kirara reacts with disbelief. The idea that Gojo Satoru could be sealed is impossible to accept, and Megumi realizes that no ordinary sorcerer would believe such a claim. With no other option left, Megumi prepares to fight. He summons Rabbit Escape, flooding the area with Shikigami. As the fight continues, Megumi carefully observes how Kirara's curse technique works. He notices star-like markings and how certain people or objects are pushed away or pulled closer. Through observation and deduction, Megumi understands that Kirara's curse technique marks cursed energy and controls movement through attraction and repulsion. By analyzing the behavior of his Shikigami and the surrounding cursed energy, Megumi eventually figures out how the technique functions and successfully breaks through it. Defeated, Kirara asks Megumi if he is really a first-year student. Megumi steps forward, lowers his head, and begs him to listen. He says they are out of time and asks Kirara to let them speak with Hikari. Kirara finally agrees. Suddenly, a loud explosion shatters the monitor room door. Yuji Itadori bursts out. Megumi is shocked, but Yuji immediately tells Megumi and Panda to not interfere. Kinji Hikari steps out behind him and confronts Yuji directly. Hikari accuses Yuji of underestimating him and throws a powerful punch straight at Yuji's face. Yuji does not dodge. He takes the hit head-on, falls, and then stands back up. Hikari continues attacking, growing more irritated as Yuji refuses to dodge or fight back. Inside his mind, Yuji thinks that compared to the Shibuya incident, this pain is nothing. All he needs to do is earn Hikari's trust, no matter how badly he is beaten. Hikari tells Yuji that as long as he can keep standing, he will listen. Hirata tries to explain that Yuji and the others are not from Jujutsu High and genuinely need Hikari's help. Hikari angrily responds that he has
already listening and continues beating Yuji mercilessly. Hikari eventually uses cursed energy in his punch, sending Yuji flying and leaving him motionless on the ground. Everyone believes Yuji is finished. Hikari tells Panda and Megumi to take Yuji and leave, never to return. At that moment, Yuji stands up again behind Hikari. Shocked, Hikari asks what Yuji is made of. Yuji repeats his answer. He says he is a cog. His role is simply to exercise curses. No matter how many times Hikari beats him down, he will keep standing until Hikari agrees to help. Yuji's determination finally reaches Hikari. He calms down and agrees to hear them out. He says he is willing to make a deal. Megumi is stunned that Hikari agreed so easily. Hirata explains that even though Hikari hates the higher-ups, he has never refused to help fellow sorcerers. Just then, Kogane appears and announces that a new rule has been added to the culling game. Rule number 9 allows players to see other players' names, points, number of rules added, and current colony. The rule required 100 points to add. The player who added the rule is revealed to be Hajime Kashima. It is shown that he has already accumulated 200 points by killing many sorcerers. Kashima states that he wants information about Sukuna, which is why he added the rule. With that revelation, the episode comes to an end.
The episode opens inside one of the culling game barriers where Kenjaku stands beside a confused civilian who has just woken up. Kenjaku calmly explains that this location was deliberately chosen as the center of the barrier due to its history as an execution ground. The barrier spans approximately 5 to 6 kilometers in radius. He reveals that while he pushed his technique to its limits to create the barrier, he could not impose completely unreasonable conditions. As a result, civilians who were already inside when the barrier was activated are allowed to leave once. He offers the man the option of waking up outside the barrier if he wishes. Elsewhere, inside another colony, Sasaki and Iguchi from Yuji's former occult club regain consciousness and realize they are trapped inside the Sendai barrier. They recall seeing a mysterious long-haired man in robes in what felt like a shared dream, subtly reinforcing Kenjaku's manipulation. The scene shifts back to Yuji Tadari, Megumi Fushigura, Panda, and Kinji Hikari as they discuss entering the culling game. Panda informs Hikari that Satoru Gojo has been sealed and Principal Yaga has been executed. Hikari reacts with shock, but ultimately agrees to cooperate. However, he makes it clear that this is a deal. Once the culling game ends, he expects help reforming Jujutsu Society's regulations. Megumi reveals that he has become the head of the Zenin clan, which surprises Hikari, though narration immediately informs the audience that the Zenin clan was annihilated shortly after. Suddenly, Kogane announces a new rule has been added to the culling game. Rule 9 allows players to view information about other players, including their names, current points, the number of rules they have added, and which colony they are located in. This dramatically changes the strategy, as players can now specifically target high-point individuals instead of fighting blindly. The group realizes that someone has already accumulated 200 points, meaning they have likely killed at least 40 players. Megumi instructs Kogane to display players with 100 points or more. Two names stand out, Hajime Kashimo and Hiromi Higuruma. Megumi proposes a new plan. Instead of killing to accumulate points themselves, they will confront a player who already has over 100 points and persuade them to add beneficial rules. Their goal is to exploit Rule 8, which states that if a player's points do not change within 19 days, their curse technique will be confiscated and they will die. They want to add a rule allowing players to transfer points to each other, preventing unnecessary deaths. After that, they hope to add another rule permitting players to spend points to withdraw from the culling game entirely. They acknowledge the system might reject a rule that directly undermines the game's purpose, so they consider possible conditions that could make it acceptable. In addition to this plan, they must also locate Angel, the sorcerer capable of unsealing the prison realm. The team splits. Hikari and Panda will enter Tokyo No. 2 colony, while Yuji and Megumi will enter Tokyo No. 1 colony. Kirara remains outside to maintain communication, since phones do not function inside the barriers. The date is November 12th at noon, and they note that Samiki has only 7 days and 12 hours left before she is forced to participate in the game. Yuji and Megumi step into Tokyo No. 1 barrier and are immediately recognized
recognized as official players. Upon entry, they are randomly teleported to separate locations within the colony, a barrier-specific condition not explicitly listed in the game's rules. Almost instantly, Yuji is attacked by two players lying in wait for newcomers. One uses a helicopter-like curse technique with spinning blades, while the other propels herself using rocket-like hair. They target Yuji aggressively, intending to kill him quickly and collect points. Yuji analyzes their techniques mid-fight, noticing that their power weakens at certain ranges. He counters their attacks, breaks through their offense, and defeats them with close-quarters combat. After the fight, a man named Rin Amai calls out to Yuji, recognizing him from middle school and referring to his old nickname. Amai explains that life inside the colony has become pure survival. Players either fight or are hunted. He indicates that powerful players tend to gather in resource-rich or strategically valuable areas of the city, such as heavily damaged districts. Meanwhile, Megumi encounters a woman named Remi, who appears frightened and injured. She attempts to manipulate Megumi into protecting her, asking him to become her knight. Megumi remains cautious and focused on gathering information. When he asks about Hiramuma, Remi confirms that Hiramuma has accumulated 100 points and is known within the colony. She provides vague directions toward areas where stronger players are likely concentrated. Megumi remains wary, aware that deception is common in this environment. As the episode closes, both Yuji and Megumi move deeper into Tokyo No. 1 colony, separated by distance but pursuing the same objective: to locate Hiramuma, secure access to his points, and implement new rules that could change the fate of everyone trapped in the culling game.
The episode opens in March 2016 in Morioka City, Iwate Prefecture. A statistic appears on screen stating that Japan's criminal conviction rate is 99.9%. A young man named Keita Oe is suddenly confronted by police officers and arrested on suspicion of robbery and murder. He panics and resists, worried about what will happen to the cat he secretly keeps in his residence, since pets are not allowed where he lives. The case against him seems overwhelming. A mother and daughter were found stabbed to death. Oe fled when approached by police, and a knife stained with the victim's blood was discovered in his home. DNA testing links the blood on the knife to the victims. Despite this, Oe insists he is innocent and claims the knife does not belong to him. The case is taken up by defense attorney Hiromi Higuruma. Unlike many lawyers who avoid difficult cases, Higuruma chooses to defend Oe because he believes there are inconsistencies in the investigation. He questions the fairness of Oe's interrogation and points out that trauma and pressure may have influenced his behavior. Higuruma investigates the non-profit organization where Oe works as a live-in employee. Oe receives little pay, mostly allowances and occasional meals, and must pay rent to the facility. Many residents there have prior criminal records, and the organization itself has suspicious financial ties connected to disaster relief funds. Higuruma digs deeper into the non-profit's activities, tax records, and the backgrounds of its residents, determined to uncover the truth. A flashback reveals an earlier case that shaped Higuruma's outlook. He once defended a 19-year-old accused of drunk driving after being pressured by coworkers to drink and then drive. The coworkers coordinated their testimonies to protect themselves. Despite Higuruma's efforts, the young man was convicted, and in his anger, he accused Higuruma of giving him false hope. This failure left Higuruma painfully aware of the limits of good intentions within a flawed legal system. Returning to Oe's case, the initial trial ends with a not guilty verdict. The courtroom reacts in shock. However, the prosecution files an appeal. In the second trial, without presenting any meaningful new evidence, the higher court overturns the acquittal and sentences Oe to life imprisonment. The court dismisses doubts about missing individuals connected to the non-profit and criticizes the previous investigation's conclusions. Higuruma reflects on how difficult it is for cases to be properly reviewed at the highest levels, as most appeals are rejected without thorough reconsideration. Watching the system reverse what he believed was justice, something inside him breaks. Public reaction is harsh, with headlines declaring justice meaningless. Higuruma becomes disillusioned, realizing that the legal system he trusted does not guarantee fairness. The story shifts to the present during the culling game. Yuji Itadori and Megumi Fushiguro are searching for Higuruma, who has accumulated 100 points. Confusing reports suggest Higuruma has been seen in both Shinjuku and Ikebukuro, leading Yuji and Megumi to move separately toward different locations. Yuji encounters a group of delinquents harassing a younger
boy. Irritated by their behavior, he steps in and tells them to stop. Afterward, he continues toward the location where he believes Hiruguma is staying. He learns that the route through Ikebukuro may increase the chance of encountering other players, but proceeds anyway, determined to reach Hiruguma. Meanwhile, Megumi follows information given to him by a girl named Remy, believing she is guiding him to Hiruguma. Instead, he walks into a trap. Reggie Star is waiting there. Fully aware that Remy misled Megumi, Reggie attempts to recruit Megumi to his side, casually explaining that players must adapt within the culling game structure. Megumi refuses to engage in conversation and prepares to fight, summoning Divine Dog without hesitation. Yuji eventually arrives at a theater that Hiruguma is using as a base. Inside, he finds Hiruguma sitting fully clothed in a bathtub, calm and detached. Yuji begins speaking directly to him. He explains that Hiruguma has reached 100 points and asks him to use those points to add a rule to the culling game, a rule that would allow players to transfer points freely and reduce forced killing. Yuji emphasizes that Hiruguma is not a reincarnated ancient sorcerer, but a modern human whose curse technique awakened recently, suggesting that he can still be reasoned with. Hiruguma listens quietly. He questions whether the culling game, despite its brutality, might actually be more honest than the legal system he once served. Unlike the courts, the game follows strict, unchanging rules. There are no hidden appeals or sudden reversals. For someone who watched justice overturned without cause, the clarity of the culling game's structure feels consistent. Yuji insists that changing the rules could save lives and reduce unnecessary bloodshed. However, Hiruguma does not agree. The conversation grows tense as their opposing beliefs become clear. Yuji believes the system should be changed to protect people. Hiruguma, disillusioned by his past, stands firm in his view of order and consequence within the game. The episode ends with both confrontations set. Yuji facing Hiruguma in a battle of ideals, and Megumi standing against Reggie after being lured into a trap.
The episode begins with Yuji Itadori rushing toward Hiromi Higuruma, hoping to defeat him before he can activate his domain expansion. However, just as Yuji is about to land a punch, the domain activates and instantly stops him. Inside the domain, violence is completely prohibited. Both Yuji and Higuruma are transported into a courtroom-like setting where they stand in separate positions, like participants in a trial. Higuruma's Shigami, Judge Man, appears and begins the proceedings. Judge Man announces the case and states that Yuji must choose one of three options: plead guilty, plead innocent, or remain silent. If Yuji decides to speak, he must present his defense. After that, Higuruma will reveal the evidence, argue his side of the case, and Judge Man will deliver the verdict. Higuruma explains that his domain resembles techniques used by ancient sorcerers. Instead of guaranteeing the opponent's death like many modern domains, it simply ensures that his technique will hit. Because of this simpler structure, Higuruma is able to use such a powerful ability despite being relatively new as a sorcerer. The fight begins when Judge Man accuses Yuji of entering a pachinko parlor while he was still a minor. Yuji quickly starts thinking about how to respond. After considering his options, he decides to admit that he entered the building, but claims that he only went inside to use the restroom. Based on that explanation, he argues that he should be considered innocent. However, the evidence quickly disproves his claim. Higuruma reveals a photo showing Yuji withdrawing money from a nearby machine close to the pachinko parlor. Since Yuji already admitted that he entered the building, the evidence makes his explanation appear dishonest. Because of this contradiction, Judge Man delivers the verdict and declares Yuji guilty. As punishment, Judge Man confiscates something from Yuji. Immediately after the verdict, the courtroom disappears and the battle resumes. Higuruma attacks with his large judge's gavel, changing its shape and size until it resembles a heavy club. With a powerful swing, he sends Yuji flying across the area. It is then that Yuji realizes he can no longer control his cursed energy. The narration explains Higuruma's extraordinary talent as a sorcerer. Within only 12 days of awakening his abilities, he had already reached the level of a grade 1 sorcerer and mastered several complex aspects of cursed energy.
energy. Because of his strength, he defeated many other players in the culling game and collected over 100 points. The fight continues, with both of them exchanging blows. Despite losing his cursed energy, Yuji keeps fighting using only his physical strength and durability. Even so, Higuruma maintains the advantage as Yuji struggles to land a successful hit while constantly dodging the lawyer's attacks. Higuruma also notices something unusual. The confiscation penalty is normally supposed to remove a sorcerer's curse technique, not their cursed energy entirely. Even with that disadvantage, Yuji is still able to keep fighting. This greatly impresses Higuruma, who realizes just how resilient Yuji really is. As the battle intensifies, Yuji finally attempts to counterattack, but Higuruma strikes him again with the gavel. Instead of simply knocking him away, Higuruma tries to crush him into the ground with the heavy weapon. Pinned down and running out of options, Yuji desperately searches for a strategy. At the last moment, he suddenly remembers something about the trial rules. With no other choice left, Yuji demands a retrial. Instantly, both fighters are teleported back into the courtroom again. This time, however, the trial moves extremely quickly. Judge Man immediately announces a new accusation, stating that Yuji Itadori committed mass murder during the Shibuya incident. Without hesitation, Yuji admits that he is guilty. The moment he confesses, Judge Man delivers the verdict once again. Yuji is declared guilty and his cursed energy is confiscated again. This time, however, the punishment is far severe. Higuruma receives a special weapon known as the Executioner's Sword. The Executioner's Sword has a terrifying ability. Anyone who is touched by it will die instantly. Higuruma moves forward to attack Yuji with the deadly weapon, but he hesitates. Although he often believes that people are weak and ugly, Yuji's willingness to accept guilt affects him deeply. The evidence provided by Judge Man had already shown that during the Shibuya incident, Yuji's body was being controlled by Ryomen Sukuna. Higuruma knows that Yuji was not actually responsible for the massacre. Just as both of them prepare to strike each other, Higuruma suddenly cancels his technique and allows Yuji's attack to hit him. Then, Higuruma explains the evidence to Yuji and asks why he confessed to the crime when he knew it was Sukuna who committed it. From a legal perspective, Yuji should not be held responsible. However, Yuji disagrees. He says that it is still his fault because he was too weak to stop Sukuna. Hearing this answer changes Higuruma's decision. He agrees to help Yuji and decides to use his points to add a new rule to the culling game. The new rule allows players to transfer their points to other players. After the rule is approved, Higuruma immediately transfers 1 point to Yuji. With that done, Higuruma prepares to leave. Yuji asks what he plans to do next and suggests that he could help them if he wants, but Higuruma declines, saying that staying around Yuji would only make him feel worse about himself and everything he has done. With those words, Higuruma walks away, bringing the episode to an end.
The episode begins with Reggie Star explaining his understanding of the culling game to Megumi Fushiguro. He states that Kenjaku will only take action once only the strongest players remain alive, meaning everything happening now is part of a larger plan to filter out the weak. Reggie also mentions that he is gathering strong allies and preparing for what is coming next. Megumi refuses to accept this and instead demands that Reggie surrender his points. In response, Reggie calls one of his allies, Shizuru, and orders him to attack. Shizuru immediately moves in, but Megumi reacts quickly, throwing him out of the building without hesitation. At the same time, Megumi summons Nu to continue attacking him from outside. He also sends his divine dog to attack Reggie, but the Shikigami is quickly defeated. Suddenly, an eye falls from above and explodes near Megumi. This attack comes from another ally, Iori, who has the ability to turn parts of his body into explosives. Megumi narrowly avoids the blast, but the situation becomes even more complicated when Remy tries to restrain him. Despite her presence, Iori launches another attack, showing no concern for her safety. Even after witnessing this, Remy continues to side with Reggie. When Megumi confronts her, she asks him to promise that he will protect her, just like Reggie did. Before anything else can happen, Chizuru reappears, but the moment is interrupted by Kogane announcing the addition of a new rule to the game. This announcement triggers a shift in Megumi's mindset. He becomes more aggressive
aggressive and begins fighting with the clear intention to kill. Using Nu and Max Elephant together, Megumi forces Chizuru out of the building once again, but this time he follows him outside. As they fall to the street below, Megumi attacks and slashes Chizuru's head. At this point, Megumi is no longer concerned about collecting points and is focused entirely on survival. However, the battle is far from over, as both Reggie and Iori move in to kill him. Iori launches another attack using his exploding teeth, but at that moment, Fumihiko Takaba suddenly appears and shields Megumi with his own body. Takaba protests that fighting 2 against 1 is unfair and claims that the attack did no damage even though he is visibly injured. His behavior surprises both his enemies and Megumi. Megumi accepts Takaba's help, and Takaba immediately counterattacks. He delivers a flying kick that sends Iori crashing into a wall, then continues to deflect his attacks using a paper fan before slamming him into another wall. This gives Megumi an opening to focus on Reggie, who attempts to escape as Nu chases him. Megumi uses Max Elephant to release a large amount of water, flooding the street. During this, Reggie reveals more of his ability by using a receipt to materialize a surfboard, allowing him to move across the water and avoid the attack. He continues using various receipts to create objects and launch attacks, but none of them manage to defeat Megumi. When the fighting briefly pauses, Reggie demonstrates the true extent of his technique by using a receipt for a spa, instantly refreshing his body, while Megumi remains injured and exhausted. Realizing the disadvantage, Megumi retreats into a nearby gymnasium, planning to use the enclosed space to his advantage. However, Reggie is already prepared and launches another assault. 2 trucks suddenly crash into the building, nearly crushing Megumi. Immediately after, a rain of flower pots falls on him, followed by a barrage of furniture and other objects. Under constant pressure, Megumi struggles to find an opening. As Reggie becomes convinced that he has already won, Megumi reveals that he has always had difficulty dealing with barrier techniques, which is why he intentionally chose a closed space. At that moment, Reggie realizes what Megumi is about to do, but it is already too late. The surroundings are suddenly engulfed in darkness as Megumi activates his domain expansion, bringing the battle to a decisive turning point.
In this episode, it starts with Reggie activating a technique similar to Simple Domain. Confident in his strategy, he believes it will cancel the guaranteed hit effect of Megumi Fushiguro's domain expansion. However, Reggie immediately realizes he has made a huge mistake. Megumi's domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden, is still incomplete, meaning it doesn't have a guaranteed hit effect in the first place. Reggie's countermeasure ends up being completely useless, leaving him open to Megumi's attack. Megumi quickly takes advantage of the opening and lands several powerful blows on Reggie. Even after taking the hits, Reggie refuses to give up. He remembers that everything stored inside Megumi's shadows adds weight that Megumi himself has to carry. Using his receipt technique, Reggie summons 3 full-sized cars and drops them into Megumi's shadows. The massive weight immediately overwhelms Megumi, forcing him to the ground. Every movement becomes difficult as his body struggles under the incredible burden. But Megumi has already prepared a counterattack. Instead of trying to escape the pressure, he summons Max Elephant directly above Reggie. The enormous Shikigami crashes down, forcing Reggie to support its tremendous weight if he wants to survive. Now, both fighters are locked in a brutal battle of endurance. While being crushed beneath Max Elephant, Reggie desperately tries to figure out how Megumi's domain expansion truly works. He comes up with several theories, hoping to discover a weakness before it's too late. Eventually, the overwhelming weight drags Reggie deep into the shadows. Believing the fight is finally over, Megumi lets his guard down for just a moment. Suddenly, one of the cars bursts out of the shadows with Reggie riding on top of it. Since he never gave the cars any commands before they sank, he was still able to control one afterward, allowing him to escape from the shadows. Without wasting any time, Reggie reveals his final trump card. Using another receipt, he summons a gigantic house high above the battlefield and sends it crashing toward Megumi. Knowing there is no way he can survive the impact, Megumi waits until the very last split second before sinking into his own shadows and deactivating Chimera Shadow Garden. The enormous house crashes through the battlefield, destroying the floor beneath them. Both fighters fall into the flooded level below. Their cursed energy is nearly exhausted, and both are physically worn out. With almost nothing left, the battle turns into a desperate hand-to-hand fight. They exchange punch after punch, each refusing to back down. Just when believing victory is within reach, Megumi reveals his final move. Divine Dog, which had only been pretending to be destroyed earlier in the battle, suddenly attacks Reggie from behind. The surprise attack is fatal. Reggie collapses, realizing he is lost. Before taking his final breath, he transfers all of his culling game points to Megumi. Meanwhile, Hazanoki continues attacking Fumihiko Takaba, but no matter what he does, Takaba doesn't suffer any damage. Even the injuries Takaba received earlier mysteriously heal themselves. At that moment, Kogane announces Reggie's death. After hearing the announcement, Hazanoki immediately gives up on fighting and retreats. Takaba simply jokes around and lets him leave without chasing him. The narrator then reveals the truth behind Takaba's incredible power. His curse technique allows anything he genuinely finds funny to become reality. The most unbelievable part is that Takaba doesn't even understand his own ability. Because of that, his curse technique becomes almost impossible to predict or counter, giving him the potential to rival even Satoru Gojo. Elsewhere, Remy also manages to survive. Although Megumi catches up to her, he ultimately decides to spare her life. Completely exhausted from the battle, he can no longer stand on his feet and collapses in a nearby alley. Just before he loses consciousness, a mysterious figure descends from the sky. Angel has finally appeared. At the same time, the focus shifts to Sendai Colony, where Yuta Okotsu has already defeated one of the colony's strongest sorcerers. However, his mission is far from over. 3 powerful opponents still remain, and Yuta prepares to eliminate every one of them as the episode comes to an end.
In this episode, it starts with Yuta reflecting on everything that has happened so far. His friends are injured, everyone is exhausted, and Yuta basically decides, you know what, I'll handle this myself. His goal is simple: get the 400 points they need and take down Kenjaku alone. But of course, Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't let him have a peaceful moment. While Yuta is helping civilians escape, a massive swarm of cockroaches suddenly starts rushing toward them. Yuta immediately sends Rika to protect the civilians, while he stays behind to deal with the threat. And then we meet Kuro Urushi, basically a humanoid cockroach curse that is absolutely obsessed with the taste of blood. Yeah, nightmare fuel. Kuro Urushi unleashes thousands of insects and completely swarms Yuta, eventually dragging the fight far away from the civilians. Yuta could end the fight pretty quickly with reverse curse technique, but there's one problem. He doesn't want everyone to know everything he can do. Unfortunately, Kuro Urushi pushes him into a corner. The curse slashes Yuta multiple times, and disgusting maggots start coming out of his wounds. Then, when Kuro Urushi tries to strangle him, Yuta literally bites the curse. And this is where Yuta reminds everyone why he's built different. He floods Kuro Urushi with cursed energy from inside and completely blows the curse apart. But Yuta barely gets a second to breathe, because another player immediately shows up. Takako arrives after learning that Yuta can use reverse curse technique. She wastes absolutely no time and kicks him straight into the air. Yuta quickly realizes that Takako's technique can distort space, making her extremely difficult to hit. So instead of immediately throwing hands, Yuta tries talking to her. But honestly, he probably should have kept his mouth shut. Yuta slowly gets under her skin until Takako completely loses her patience. She attacks him at full power and starts flying through the sky while choking Yuta. And then Ishigori shows up and basically says, "Why fight one person when I can fight both?" He fires one of his massive cursed energy blasts directly at them. The attack hits both Yuta and Takako, but Yuta immediately notices something worse. The blast could also reach the civilians, even with Rika protecting them. So Yuta changes targets and charges straight toward Ishigori. The two start throwing hands, and Yuta tries using a metal pole to redirect Ishigori's massive blast. Except the cursed energy gets stronger and stronger until the pole literally breaks. So now Yuta has no choice but to dodge everything himself. Ishigori blasts Yuta away, and before Yuta can recover, Takako appears again and smashes him straight into the ground. At this point, both of them think Yuta is finished. They seriously underestimated him. Yuta puts on his ring and fully manifests Rika. And this isn't the usual Rika appearance.
This is the real deal. Rika helps restore Yuta's cursed energy and even gives him an armor-like glove, basically turning Yuta into a walking problem for everyone else. Now the fight becomes absolute chaos. Yuta fights Ishigori while Rika keeps Takako busy. Then they switch opponents, attack from different angles, and basically turn the battlefield into a non-stop three-way deathmatch. Nobody can get a clean advantage, and eventually all three realize the same thing. There's only one way to finish this: domain expansion. Yuta, Takako, and Ishigori all prepare to unleash their domains at the same time. And just when you think we're about to witness one of the craziest domain battles ever, Kuro Urushi comes back. Yes, the cockroach is still alive. The curse suddenly invades the battle and disrupts the domain expansions, completely ruining the fight. But Kuro Urushi doesn't stop there. It attacks Takako and manages to cut off one of her arms. Ishigori immediately sees his chance and fires another massive blast. The attack hits both Takako and Kuro Urushi. Takako goes down, and Kuro Urushi is finally killed. Now only two fighters remain standing: Yuta and Ishigori. And Ishigori is absolutely not wasting the opportunity. He fires a gigantic cursed energy blast at Yuta from only a few meters away. Yuta has almost nothing left, but he still manages to think of a way out. He uses Takako's technique to redirect the blast straight into the sky. But there's a catch. Yuta no longer has enough strength to keep Rika fully manifested. So now it's basically just Yuta versus Ishigori. No massive backup, no easy tricks. Just straight hands. The two of them start beating each other down until finally Yuta finds an opening. He manages to hold Ishigori down, and then comes the biggest brain play of the entire fight. Remember that massive blast Yuta redirected earlier? Yeah, it comes crashing right back down, right onto Ishigori. Ishigori survives, but at this point he knows he's been completely defeated. So he agrees to give his points to Yuta. Takako also agrees to give Yuta her points, but before she does, she leaves him with a serious warning. Yuta has no idea what kind of enemies he's really dealing with. And honestly, after everything that just happened, that warning hits different. Yuta came into this fight trying to collect points. Instead, he ended up fighting a cursed cockroach, a space-bending sorcerer, and a human artillery cannon, all at the same time. And somehow, Yuta won. This episode was basically Jujutsu Kaisen saying, "You thought the previous fights were crazy? That." The animation goes absolutely insane. The choreography is non-stop, and every character brings something completely different to the battlefield. Kuro Urushi is straight up disgusting, but it adds a huge amount of chaos to the fight. Takako's technique is one of the most unique abilities we've seen so far, basically turning space itself into a weapon. And Ishigori? That man is basically a walking cannon with an attitude. The best part is that nobody feels completely safe. Everyone is ridiculously powerful, but one wrong move can still get them taken out instantly. And that's what makes this entire battle so crazy. There's no moment where you can confidently say who's going to win. Everyone keeps adapting. Everyone keeps switching targets. Everyone keeps getting pushed closer to their limit. And somehow, Yuta is the one who survives the entire madness. Season 3 ends on an absolutely massive note, with Yuta gaining the points he needed while also receiving a warning that the real threats are still out there. So yeah, if you thought Yuta was already terrifying before this episode, this fight just proved that we haven't even seen his full potential yet.